Today we're going to be out here working on my buddy Saulo's 2009 Mitsubishi Lancer. It's his wife's car. We're going to be changing the brakes. Just going to do a quick little how-to on how to do that, so let's get started. First things first, you'll locate the stock jack from inside the trunk underneath the trunk liner. It'll be right next to your spare tire, and then you will put it into a safe spot in which to jack it. These cars have several different places you can put a jack to raise the car, but as you can see by what Saulo doing, we've already found a good spot. If you have any questions, you can consult your owner's manual or do a little research online to find a spot that works for you. If you have access to an aftermarket jack that you like more, that fits, because these cars are low to the ground, both Saulo and I recommend you go with that. Is you want to try and break the torque after you get the tire slightly off the ground, but to the point where it's still touching, otherwise your tire will just spin. Do you have a lug lock?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why you have the different size lug.
Right.
Here we go. See? Let's keep people from stealing your rims, yo. All about them rims. Now that the torque is broken on the lugs, we can raise the tire completely off the ground. Also, big side note, be sure that if you have an automatic transmission, it's in park, and go ahead and raise the parking brake before you, just as a precaution, before you raise the car. Or if you have a manual transmission, raise the parking brake, and I would also recommend chalking your rear tires, or whichever tire on either the front or the rear that is not being jacked. Here, I got that.
Alright. Shit's actually pretty clean looking. The rotors aren't too worn down, so I'm not going to replace those.
Once you have the right size wrench selected, proceed to brake torque on your calipers. The main bolts for the brake calipers are this bottom bolt and this upper bolt. They cannot be identified because of their position on the caliper itself. Most of the time they have a spacer, such as this rubber booty, between it and the actual calipers itself. Saulo's moving it so we can get a better view of it. There we go. If you're not doing a brake change on a 2009 Mitsubishi Lancer, they're pretty universal across the board for disc brakes. However, there may be some differences between models and makes. You see what he's doing here to help loosen a stuck bolt? It's called a cheater bar. It'll help you with your leverage so that you can get a loose, or to get a bolt that is being difficult loose.
Show them off once I get. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, that came off easier than expected.
Probably 'cause
well, one thing we never claimed to be was experts. The reason why we were looking at these brake pads was because he had some what sound like brake squeal on stopping. But here's the new brake pad. Look at the thickness of it. Here's the old brake pad. Yeah, there is still plenty of pad left. And it looks like we just did a walk around the car. We had to get pretty crammed up in there. But it looks like the rest of the brakes are like that. First, you take the brake pad and you will place it into these channels, like so. Now that's installed, you'll take the caliper.
If you have brand new brakes and a brand new rotor, you might need to get a C-clamp. Press this piston down. Make sure the booty's good. Press this piston down before it'll let you put it on, just because everything's so tight. But
Now that your caliper retaining bolts are in place, you can now tighten them back down. What Saulo is doing here is he's applying WD-40 to the lugs so that they don't seize between times that he removes his wheel. It's nothing worse. Nothing is worse than having to change out a roadside blowout and not being able to get your lugs off or stripping them out and you just being stuck there. Once your lugs are nicely lubed up, firmly place the tire back in place, and then you will proceed to begin installing the bolts to hold it in place until you can torque them down.
You always want to tighten them a little bit before you drop it, so that whenever you drop it, it doesn't displace and you end up just torquing it.
Now that we're ensuring that our lug nuts are nice and snug before we actually torque them down, we're going to drop the car. Be very careful when you're lowering a car just to make sure that there's no rolling or the jack doesn't come unseated or shift when you're lowering or raising the car. Once the jack is completely lowered, remove it from underneath the car and move to the side. Now you're on to the point where you can actually put some torque on your lug nuts and ensure that they're nice and tight, because you don't want your wheel to come off when you're driving on the road. Notice the star pattern which he's going for torquing these lug nuts. Depending on your bolt configuration is how you'll torque yours down. 5 lugs you want to do a star pattern. 4 lugs you want to do a X pattern. Alright. It's the Saulo Show, starring Saulo.